morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it is the third day of May 2024, and welcome to our show today. This is going to be fun because these are some of my favorite people going to be on today, and let's bring everybody on. We've got Dr. David Kent, Karen the Riveter, and Ralph the IT guy. How you guys doing?
Good, great. How are you?
Doing awesome. So we had a good time too. What is it? Was I out 3 weeks or two? 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
1 week I was off. So I lost track because I was gone for a week and a half. So lots of things to talk about. I'm going to throw something out there because I want everybody to know Donna Brandenburg got somewhat of a credible threat that was chipped out yesterday to get rid of Brandenburg. And it was kind of interesting, but I'm just gonna tell everybody that's listening to this. I know who the people that are connected to this, and if anybody decides to do anything crazy, you can start looking right back towards the network that's around the DeVosses, and that's where you're gonna. That's probably, if anything happens to me, that's the first place to look at, and but it's kind of gotten deeper. I've gotten more information and tying things back to Grand Rapids and the Ottawa GOP and all this other stuff going on. Surprise, surprise. Where the DeVos is at? Lake Macatawa. And I'm going to throw something out there. If you want to find out who's involved in this, look at the gated community where they live out there on the south side of Lake Mac, and you'll think all your little grassroots people that are out there that say they're grassroots and they're going to kick the establishment out, they're all working together. They're all working together. So Donna Brandenburg apparently, like Icarus, is getting a little close to the sun here, and I just don't care. But I got everything documented. So if something ever happens to me, it's gonna be all over the place. Probably want to just back away from the crazy lady out there, guys, because this could get real interesting real quick. So anyhow,
and you don't sound suicidal.
No, I'm not suicidal. I am full-time pissed off at everybody that's done the wrong thing in the United States of America, and pretty much run right straight to the fire when that kind of nonsense takes off. But that's okay. Be stupid and, play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Did you notify the FBI?
I am pretty extra sure that the FBI is probably not our best friend at this moment in time.
Some of them are. Some of them are. Tori got a death threat last week. Not a bad threat. Some really bad stuff last week, and she knows she contacted the FBI, and they took action. So, yeah.
So, well, I think that I'm going to be able to. Funny how the FBI shares kind of a shared address with, say, I don't know, the Van Andel Institute down there and such. These people are all tied in. And to a degree that would be shocking to most people. And, it really doesn't work well for them when somebody can actually do, I don't know, like aerial maps and be able to do comparisons on things so that we can pinpoint exactly what's going on. And the stuff that I do is just hack around. I'm going to tell you what, the good guys have everything. And to the bad guys, screw you. We're not backing down from this. And things could get a little interesting. Who knows? But so be it. Anyhow,
be safe.
Yeah. Well, pray a lot.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so how are you guys doing today?
I'm doing well.
Yeah,
doing good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I actually had a talk yesterday with someone about how things are going, and it's like, well. Great thing is whether the ship gets righted and things go good or things go bad. God's got my back, and I know where I'm headed, so I'm not afraid to die.
Yeah. Well, I think it was really interesting because we were at the Constitution Party National Convention, and we nominated Randall Terry and Pastor Stephen Broden. They're unapologetically pro-life. Which I really think that Terry basically said, Randall basically said, I am not going to win. He said, as a minor party, he said, I know that it would be a miracle from God for us to win. But what we're going to do is push the narrative and make people face those things that are uncomfortable truths, which basically outs the entire Republican Party and the entire Democrat Party, because these people are the enemy of the people. And the people that are within these parties, they're lying bastards. And they replace themselves with the other people that are working together. They're all friends and they're all working together, and they're working for the puppet masters that are sitting on the top. Make no mistake about this. And when people come out of the woodwork saying that they're a grassroots candidate, probably not. Probably not. And they're going to kick this this establishment candidate out. Really? Probably not. They just switched somebody out. And when you find out that somebody's a neighbor to the people that are actually doing this, if you think that this is a new person, you're sorely mistaken. They're placed. All of them are placed. So,
is there a way to tell? I mean, I just don't trust any politician and people running for office. It's just there's no way to tell.
If they got in for a reason. They're either compromised or blackmailed once they're in. Or, which is why I say I won by losing, really, because they had to get rid of me so badly that they, because I would have gone in there just the proverbial guns ablazing and not taking a back seat to this. So they continued. They knocked me out twice, and I think they're a little shocked that I'm coming back. But the great thing is now I've got full time to look into their networks, to do some more investigation. And now everybody on both sides of there's like 3 factions within the Republican Party now. They're all lying to you, all of them. And the Democrat Party is a chip shot. They're just sitting back and watching the Republican Party do the dirty deals right now. But that's okay, because the Democrat Party and the Republican Party, they're all working together.
It's a uniparty.
Right?
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting, Donna, because I listened to a video yesterday. I think I shared a link to your channel too, Kathy O'Brien, and
oh yeah, I saw that.
She was from Muskegon, and she was let's just say she has experience with the system, and she was brought into the human trafficking market multi-generationally. I'm trying to get that word out. But anyway, she had a lot of thoughts that I found really interesting about how the narratives are shaped in to create fear and trauma and control the minds of the people. And the idea that threatening you or taking you out at this point is going to make a difference to anybody. Just let's say it's the DeVos family. If you have knowledge and you're going to air it, let's say, because we all know you have Brandenburg News Network and you talk about things, that may be their threat. But if they think that's going to stop what is coming, it's foolish, because one of the things that Kathy said in her video was that she thinks the majority of people in America are awake.
Yes, I think so too.
That the scamdemic, this is what I put in my post, the scamdemic actually didn't stop people or shut down people's thoughts, but it gave people a spur toward awakening, because it took people out of their routines and they had to be open to listening and learning. And all of a sudden, a lot of people woke up. And so many people, not just Donna, are learning and open-minded and vocal. That we're well beyond the point, in my opinion, where shutting down one person is, arkansizing or whatever you want to call it, is not going to stop what is coming. It's not going to make an impact. So to me, it's a shame. And of course we're concerned for your safety, but at the same time, it's like, really? Like, you think that's going to make a difference? No.
No, it's not one person. This is not about one person. It's that they're going to try to eliminate multiple people, as they go. But who cares? I mean, to me, it's worth fighting for. I don't really care because, like you said, I know where I'm going. And because the American people are awake, they aren't going to be able to stop what's coming. They're just pouring gasoline on the fire.
Right.
That's really what's happening here. But yeah, I'm gonna hold this couple little cards back, but just so everybody realizes, Mr. and Miss Nature Boy and Girl out there, Betsy DeVos, who was a prince, and Dan DeVos, Dick DeVos, all of them, they did not start out the way they said they did. No, don't believe this at all. There's a narrative that went there. And you got to look further into this. Why did Betsy DeVos step down on January 7 and all of a sudden $22 million went to Pence from her? Why is that? Why is that? Why did that happen? That's just a chip shot. Why is it that we've got 4 facilities in Grand Rapids, Michigan that $40 million came through a capital fund called Arlington Capital? And that's a DeVos enterprise, the vax packaging and such. That's tied right straight to DeVos and Van Andel, right straight there. And this was coming from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Why is it that when they found the cheating in the elections, it pinged servers? Where? Oh, I don't know, Grand Rapids, Michigan, because I know the people that were on the team and found it. Why is Grand Rapids so pivotal to the operation? All you got to do is start looking at the people behind the scenes, how they're connected, and what they're really up to. And the entire Republican Party, who is it being funded by? You can take a couple of guesses. And so if there's somebody that's running for grassroots or anything else like that, guaranteed they're being placed. There's not one of them that's not dirty at this point in time. So
I think you're dead on with Grand Rapids. Tori, in 2020, sent all of her people and posted a picture of this giant mansion on the Lake Michigan near Grand Rapids, and she basically said this is where they're running operations.
They sure are. They got a helipad there, and I watched.
This house?
Yeah, I know where it is.
You can't get in. It's huge fences around it and security guards. And
you want to see what it looks like?
Yeah.
Okay, hang on a minute. I'll show you. Because luckily for them, Donna Brandenburg, who's pissed off at all of them right now, has some information on this. Hang on a minute, and we're just going to throw it out there because Donna Brandenburg is fairly annoyed with it. 22,000 square foot mansion. It's just going to take me a minute. Let me throw this out.
I find it interesting. So WZZM 13 did a report the other day. Oh, excuse me, throat. About the DeVos family and how wonderful they are and how they have done so many wonderful things and donated so much money to the medical community, which, doesn't sound really great to me because I don't trust the medical community these days. But so they just made one last big donation, if I understand this correctly, to the Children's Hospital. And then they're shutting down this fund. And it's like, why are they? It's called a sunset. The fund is sunsetting. Well, I don't know much about how that works, but I'm kind of wondering why this happened now. Why they suddenly made one last giant donation to anything in particular, but especially a children's hospital. And then they're shutting down.
Well, money just disappears completely sometimes and evaporates into thin air, right?
Well, yeah, here's a question. MLive, which is not, that's a engineered mainstream media nonsense there, right there. And so here you go. Amway Air, Dick and Betsy DeVos move into a sprawling 22,000 square foot mansion, which you can get to, which has a helipad on it, which I've seen Black Hawks land there. because I'm a plane person. I track planes. So you tell me what's going on here. So let's check out their lovely house on Lake Michigan. Lovely. It's a beautiful house. I don't hold that against them. It's a beautiful, beautiful house in a gated community, which now the next question should be, wonder who else lives in that community with the DeVosses that comes out of nowhere. I wonder. But it's like, okay, you're going to poke the bear. I'll throw it out there and double down. So this is going to be kind of fun because we'll see how smart people actually are, or if they're gonna just follow the next little guru that's going to come out of nowhere, who's charming, who's got all the right words. You know, Ford spent his time in that area too, and Ford started out as a good guy. I know a guy that grew up with him, and when he went bad, he was nothing more than a Kissinger puppet. And all you got to do is go down to the Kissinger Museum. It's not a Ford museum; it's a Kissinger Museum in Grand Rapids. If you want to see it, it's a triangle on the top. There's all sorts of symbolism there. But look at every single picture that's in there, and I'm going to tell you what, you're going to find out that Ford was only taking directions from Kissinger, and Kissinger was the one that was set up the CCP in China. Good riddance to him. I hope he rots in hell.
Kathy O'Brien mentioned Ford in her video yesterday too. Or yeah, yesterday. I saw it yesterday.
So if Ford spent summers there, and who else is out there in their little gated community who pops into a political scene, we need to start asking questions. I'm going to allow that out there and see if people are good enough to get out there and do some research and see what they come up with, because I'm not going to chip this stuff to all of you. It's all documented, you know, and it's like, I got a feeling that they're going down hard, big. And if I have access to find this out, how much more does the intelligence community have on these people?
Yeah, that's kind of my point.
A lot.
You know, when a vulture, let's say a turkey vulture, because that's what we're familiar with here. And when I was in animal rehab, I experienced this firsthand. It's very unpleasant. Turkey vulture eats something. It's typically not a very pleasant thing that they're eating. It's gross, right? It's dead, it's decaying, it's rotten. They love that kind of stuff. They got a belly full of rotten meat, and a predator comes along, something startles them, or somebody walks into the rehab center, is the case with me, and they want to take off flying. But before they do that, they dump their load. They regurgitate all that nasty stuff out of their belly, and it lightens them up and distracts the predator as they take off. And that's kind of what I see happening, you know, what I call a screaming bobcat caught in a trap, and it's got nothing left but to scream and wail and try to scare you away. It's this moment in time where I feel like that's what's happening to people who have done the wrong things for a while. Now they've got a belly full of rot, and they're going to dump it and run. That's what it feels like to me.
You know, I know of someone that had a pet bobcat, and that always sounded like fun.
Until it's not.
Until it's not.
Yeah, but they're so fluffy.
I think they're probably not actually soft like you would think. Like, I've petted a tiger and I've petted a cougar, and they look really soft, but their coat is harsh.
Lions, I petted a lion.
Yeah.
And that was kind of cool. And they have a real coarse fur, super coarse. But a lynx, that's another thing. I think we all need lynx. A lynx pet for a pet. That would be fun. So
snow leopard.
Snow leopard, yeah.
I found out the other day that the Lansing Zoo has a palace cat, and I got to go see that because those things are awesome.
Those are funny animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They got just such a funny face on them and all kinds of fluff.
Yeah,
we are so far from what we thought we would be talking about.
Wow, that's like ricocheted off the walls here. This is amazing. So,
did anybody go see Trump? Did you go see Trump when he was in Michigan the other day?
No.
No,
I didn't.
you couldn't get in.
I didn't even see him any footage or pictures. Of course, I wasn't online yesterday very much at all. So
You
I
actually
don't know,
couldn't
but
get in to see him. You had to have an invite to get in there to see him.
To even get into the rally?
Yeah.
Oh, there was a lot of people there. I didn't go. I've been to 4.
Which one was that? Was that the one at the Amway, the DeVos Amway, or was it the other one?
It was in Saginaw County.
Oh, I don't know about that one, but I know the DeVos said rally, the DeVos building rally, the DeVos is that have the vax, facilities and such. You had to have an invite to get in there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the private one.
Yeah, but that's when they were talking about the gal that
they need a lot of money.
Yeah, this is interesting. So what are we going to talk about today, David? Let's talk about off the grid first aid.
Let's talk about some medical stuff, right?
Yeah.
All right. I just made a list that off the top of my head of things that you should have to continue with our first aid supplies.
Okay.
Starting with gloves. Basic stuff. And there's sterile gloves and non-sterile clean gloves. I'd have both, a bunch of both. And I guess in an emergency, you kind of want to protect yourself, right? So you want gloves and you don't want to get the person infected. So gloves, face mask. We all hate face masks, but if somebody's bleeding and coughing blood in your face or something, you want a mask.
Have you had that when you were before?
All the time. Well, I'm a ENT facial plastic surgeon, so anything from the neck up, bloody noses, people bleeding in the mouth, shot in the face. When they're breathing, the blood spurts out. So you don't want to inhale that. Safety glasses. Just to protect yourself in an emergency situation.
Okay.
Something that I love are headlights. I use them all the time. I used to use them in surgery.
I thought you said head lice.
Head lice, yeah. I love head lice. Can I come to the farm and get some? No, headlight.
Headlamp.
Headlight is great. The old having a pen light or something to look in someone's wound or their nose or mouth or ear, that doesn't work. Headlights are great. So, and they're great around the house and, anything at night, when you're walking around, I'm sure you guys know headlights are fantastic. I've got all kinds of them. How about a first aid book? Do any of you guys have a first aid book?
I
Multiple.
actually do.
Several.
I figured you would.
Actually, I was just thinking when you were talking about blood,
Yeah.
a bloodborne pathogens class. I'm sure you could probably find them online too.
Yeah.
That would be a really good lesson for people because you don't think about that. We typically don't think about this stuff. If you're in the medical community, absolutely. But if you were trying to help a stranger, you don't know what kind of diseases they might have. Having a knowledge of bloodborne pathogens is really important.
Yeah, Karen, that's great. Great. Any type of classes or training, in the
Do you have
community.
suggestions as to where to look for classes like that?
Probably Red Cross, your local community, the CPR, advanced CPR. I'm sure there's all kinds of classes like that. And a lot of them are online too, especially something like bloodborne pathogens. Ooh,
Cool.
This is cool, and it's got 4 books in it, and one of them is first
what do
aid.
they say?
Let's see. Oh, I got to turn this way.
Okay, first aid. Nice. Trapping, gathering, cooking, bushcraft. That sounds interesting. What's
Yeah,
bushcraft?
so here you
how
go.
to craft stuff out of the bush, huh?
Yeah,
I've got their first aid one in it. I really like that book. It's great for like if you're out there camping or hunting or something like that, and you got to like splint a broken bone or something like that, that kind of thing. It's great for that.
How about like how to build a stretcher or something? You know, if you're out in the woods, someone breaks their leg and you got to get them back.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great book.
5-minute water boil, injuries, accidents, stay safe while improvising, arms and legs. There's all kinds of cool stuff in here. I mean, the book is pretty, you know, chest wounds, gunshot wounds, helicopter evacuation, signaling, wound cleaning, bone and joint injuries, blisters, burns, circulatory, breathing issues, neurological issues, abdominal issues. I mean, this thing goes on and on and on forever.
I like the first thing you said about the water boiling. I think like if there's ever a grid down situation, there's going to be a lot of problems with water. You know, your toilets are going to back up, you know, into your house and stuff, and getting water out of your sink, you know, is going to be a problem. You know, water goes bad pretty fast. So you really, you know, it's not part of my list, but having those life straws are good. Tablets. You may not be able to boil your water either, but and back to my how much I love bleach.
Yeah,
bleach kills everything. So
and everybody should have some stainless steel like pots, cookware, that kind of thing, because you can boil an awful lot of water over a wood fire in stainless steel.
Yep. Yeah. Even in aluminum.
Yeah.
But
so
it might be hard to boil water. It might be hard to start a fire for a lot of people. I'm concerned about a lot of people would die in a grid down situation, like
quickly too.
Really quick. Like most people have a day's worth of food, a couple days worth of food, and they probably don't even know how to get water.
I think diarrhea is going to be the one that gets most people when things go down, is that they start, you know, improvising with things and they don't know how to keep things clean in an emergency.
Yeah.
Use the old Oregon Trail game meme. You have died of dysentery.
That's a common kill. It's probably, I don't know the facts, but I think it's probably the #1 killer in the world, you know, especially of children, is dehydration from diarrhea.
That's why it became such a meme for the Oregon Trail game, is because that was a very common way to lose that game, trying to, you know, simulating the Oregon Trail travels. That was a real common way to lose that game, was dying of dysentery.
Yeah.
Can I tip out there a natural method going back to the pioneers? That's one of the reasons they threw a silver dollar, a true silver dollar in their milk, because silver has the ability, it's antimicrobial. So with colloidal silver, which is something you can make if you want, it's expensive, but like I know how to make it, and I have made a lot of that. That literally is an anti-parasitic, and if you've got anything that's a stomach bug, colloidal silver works reasonably well. You just got to watch the amount, and you got to watch the particle size and how people make it, so you don't end up looking gunmetal gray from Algeria. Because the silver will come out in your skin. And you ever see anybody that has Algeria? It's like it's crazy stuff.
I do have to wonder, though, if that's actually as effective as just like systemically preventing illness as zinc fume fever is from overdoing it on zinc from welding.
Yeah, that's pretty dangerous.
Yeah, but it's effective.
This is what it looks
wouldn't recommend it, but I can speak from experience on that one now, that at least zinc fume fever is effective.
This actually is what Algeria looks like. If you ever see anybody that has Algeria, it's from drinking. They used to give silver tablets in the 60s, and people would take it, but it turns the people like a gunmetal gray.
Well, maybe we can start a new fad.
Yeah, that's where the term actually blue bloods came from, is that during the plagues, the rich had silver, and they would take in silver, they grind up silver and take it, and it turned them blue.
Donna, you're so smart. I never heard that before. That's so interesting.
I'm not smart actually, but thank you. I've got like a bored mind, and I you know,
I love that.
But that's where it actually came from. That's where the blue bloods came from. It was ingesting silver, and they didn't know how to do it the way we do it now, which is run an electric charge through it. it's pretty easy to make colloidal silver. I've made a lot of it. And when I went to India, I took colloidal silver with me, and we were the only ones that came back that didn't have either parasites like Giardia and such, because we were taking colloidal silver. So if you have diarrhea, that is one way to works reasonably well, but you really got to watch what you're doing, because you don't want to look like these guys.
Yeah, bismuth will do the same thing. Remember I mentioned Pepto-Bismol last time. You can prophylactically take that when you go and you're going to a place that's got bad water. That turns your tongue black too.
Oh, does it?
Whole body, yeah, oh yeah. So
is it permanent?
No.
Oh, Argyria
is the silver permanent? Is it?
Yes.
Doesn't go away. Wow. Okay.
No, there's a couple of people in the area where I'm from that I've seen them. I've actually seen them in like there's a coffee shop they go to once in a while, and but yeah, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the scene from Monty Python. I'm not really dead.
I'm just silver.
There's a couple of ladies that they'll go through, like go to a plastic surgeon and have them laser off their skin. Yeah. And if they can do that, I've seen somebody that has had some results with it, but once you got it, you're pretty well stuck looking gunmetal gray for the rest of your life.
You probably got to take a lot of it, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and it's a particle size that appears to cause it. So you gotta check your sources. And
so in ancient days, they were just eating pieces of silver, probably.
Yeah, that's what they would grind it up and put it in the 60s. They ground it up and they would put it into capsules, and that's where a lot of the people who have that now, they didn't use the electric method of producing it, but it does work reasonably well.
It's really easy. I mean, I've done it. You just take like something you plug in, for a radio or something, and hook the red wire to the silver and the other one in the water. And
so you've made it too.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I was making gallons of it. Once I taught some, they said that they were having such a problem with some things in Africa. And I taught some people that were missionaries over there to how to make it. I'm like, this actually will help a lot, but you got to know what you're doing. So there's your caution. Don't take it as medical advice from any of us. Look into it for yourself.
Yeah, water's a big deal. Water is a really big deal. We could probably do a whole show on water one day.
Yes.
And I always wondered, how did people in Mexico not get sick? That drink bad water all the time. They don't.
I got to figure that there's almost got to be a difference in gut microbiome to be able to combat it.
Definitely. They do get sick sometimes, but not like we do.
In other cultures, sometimes they actually consume things like certain clays. They'll eat like a clay based something and or activated charcoal, and they have these things that are part of their diets that can quite often purify the things that they're doing. Activated charcoal is another really good one you should have on hand.
Or know how to make.
it.
Even like if you look in the 1800s, 1700s, people would just go drink out of a river or a lake. That would make us sick. Like you could probably die from that, even though it's clean. It's not that clean. But they could drink. Indians, they could drink right out of these different water sources. So, but we have to be really careful. So
yeah, we're like the fruit fly model of human being on the planet.
Yeah, we've been really messed up.
I know.
So as interesting as this is, to back up about 4 steps up the rabbit trail of topics here, I did have a question for a first aid book. Do you have one that you'd recommend?
I do not. I can look and find one. I just imagine anything like the one Donna showed would be great.
Yeah,
just some general stuff, because I mean, in reality, there's a handful of things that you should know how to take care of. A couple handfuls of things. The other stuff is either probably going to kill you, like a gunshot wound to the chest. Unless you're in an emergency room, you're going to have a real hard time saving somebody's life from something like that and keeping them alive, even if you could stop the bleeding. In a grid down where there's nothing. just the basic stuff. We can talk about those things. We will.
I have an older version of the Red Cross book, and I remember it wasn't an expensive thing. I think it was around $10 or so. So they're probably pretty affordable to get. And while I wouldn't recommend donating to the Red Cross, these days, but the thing I liked about the book is that it's pretty structured. So it doesn't hurt to get into any one of these books from time to time and look over your first aid kit so you're familiar with the organization of it. Every 6 months or so, look at it and see what you've got. Pull things out. Imagine a scenario, and would you be able to find what you need right away?
Hey, check this out on a
The thing
PDF.
about the Red Cross one is that because they've got it down so well to, let's say the ABCs, for an example: airway, breathing, circulation. Those are the first 3 things that you do besides calling 911, typically in a first aid scenario. As secondary, I have diarrhea is not necessarily a first aid moment. It's not an emergency necessarily. For that, there's all kinds of other books. Like I have one sitting right next to me now called The Lost Book of Herbal Remedies, The Healing Power of Plant Medicine. And it's kind of cool because you might find
this one?
You have this condition, you can get,
Oh, I have that one
dandelion.
too. That's
Yep.
funny. Yeah, that's when I think we all have that one.
So you get a few of them, but then start to familiarize yourself with them so you know how to look things up quickly. And like in looking at gardening right now, I've done a little bit of research on herbs, and I'm thinking about growing some. By the way, I learned, you want to talk about history, that in New England, when they were first starting the colonies, they called herbs or herbs yarbs. YARBS is the pronunciation. So some people will call them that rather than herb or herb. But I'd like to grow a few maybe medicinal herbs, but I really don't know that a whole lot about them or how to use them yet. I'm thinking about it, researching it right now, and I don't want to overdo myself on the first garden. But these are the things that you start thinking about. But get your hands on one. Go to Barnes & Noble and pick one off the shelf. They've probably got a whole series of them there to pick from. But get something on hand so that you can look up quickly in an emergency what to do. And typically, except for like the kind of book that Donna showed, the bushcraft kind of thing, like if you're out in the woods, that kind of book is going to help you in a scenario where we don't have the internet, we don't have phone service, we don't have 911 to call. What you have on hand is all you have. Your Red Cross book isn't going to help you with like a gunshot wound, like Dr. David said. But if you've got a little bit of a military type kit, you might be able to seal a gunshot wound and stand a chance. And if you've got some antibiotics, or you know how to use herbs to stave off an infection, you might be able to survive something like that. Hey, it worked on The Walking Dead many times.
Well, and another thing too is that we've talked about this before, but there's a huge amount of overlap between the kind of things that you need to know in an emergency situation and an off-grid event that you would have either camping or hiking. And so a lot of times if you look into like what does a mountain climber need to know to be able to patch things up, there's a strong amount of overlap there with things that you should have on hand and knowledge that you should have. And for anyone that's doing hiking or climbing, they're going to have to generally keep the weight and bulk of their stuff down pretty good. So there's a lot of very small things that are easy to store in a kit that are designed for that kind of a situation.
Yeah. Yeah, they've got great kits on the internet where you can just get all the stuff I'm talking about. None of it is, I'm not talking about prescription stuff. Maybe a couple things I'll bring up, but you look up first
here's
aid
another
kits
one
on
that we need to
Amazon.
talk about. you went to camping. This is what we do here, guys. This is like an amoeba of subjects. So the outdoor portable toilets.
Yeah. Grid down situation, your toilet's not going to work.
That's right. So what are you going to do? You know, how are you going to deal with that?
Yeah. It
All these
potentially
cool
could back up.
Okay.
Yep.
What's next?
Okay. So let's just get into some basic stuff to have. You should just have this stuff no matter what. A thermometer. Check for fever. Infection. Fever and infection. Tweezers. An assortment of tweezers. Clamps. Hemostats. There's something called a needle driver to suture. We can do it. We're going to do suturing one day too. We're going to talk about how to do that. A scalpel, disposable scalpel.
I'd like to back up for a moment on the thermometer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have one that you particularly recommend? Because I know that even here at home, as often as we use them, by the time we start one up, all of a sudden we find out the battery's dead and we got to get another one. So how often should you check them, or is there a type that you recommend?
I'm a big believer in the good old-fashioned thermometer. I don't think it's mercury anymore, but a mercury thermometer or one with similar that doesn't require batteries, because I just are recharging, because we're talking grid down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's probably a real good idea. And I
Yeah,
think the modern ones, I think the modern ones are alcohol based, if I remember right.
Yeah, there's something else in there. They don't use the mercury anymore, but we can talk about mercury one day too.
What happened? This is
Yeah,
funny.
so you want to check for thermometers are important. You know, if somebody's got a fever, they got an infection, something's going on. A Sharpie marker is really good to have. So let's say somebody gets stung by a bee, or, you know, swells up, has an allergy somewhere, you know, on their arm, hives or whatever, an injury, and it's swollen. You want to mark the edges of it, right around the outside of it, to see if it's getting bigger, because sometimes it takes a day and you don't remember, is this getting bigger or is it healing? If something's red and infected, you may want to outline where the edge of the red is to see if it's getting bigger. So marker is really good to have. Band-Aid. Well, I'll do that next. Not Band-Aid. One thing everybody should have is Narcan. You should have one in your car, not for yourself, but you just never know. So many people are overdosing today.
It is temperature sensitive though, isn't it? So summer and winter.
Yeah, I don't know.
You have to be careful. Yeah, because I've got some before.
It says not to keep in your car.
Yeah, I think you don't want to get it like sitting in your hot car, or it'll freeze in the winter too.
Okay, so whatever, to have Narcan, if you can, it's just a good idea. Betadine, which is to clean wounds or clean the skin if you're going to make an incision in it. But a big bottle of betadine is great. How about a blood pressure cuff? Does anybody know what a blood pressure cuff is called? The medical name?
No.
A sphygmomanometer.
Glad I didn't try that one.
Yeah.
So if you know how to check the blood pressure, I recommend not, I'm assuming we're not going to have batteries or be able to plug things in to recharge them. So you probably should learn how to check someone's blood pressure without, the automatic ones are easy, but the battery is going to run out after a while.
So I got one a little while back that is USB rechargeable.
Yeah.
And for anyone that has a little USB solar panel, it gives you a little bit of a power source for that. I can see if I can look that up a second.
Okay. So yeah, there's the rechargeable ones, but do you guys know how to check someone's blood pressure if you had a stethoscope and just the cuff? The sphygmomanometer?
We have one, and I know my husband's better at that knowledge than I am. But we
Well,
also
it's
have
great.
a pulse oximeter too.
That's great.
I've never taken one with that's the pump up kind. So how do you do that?
Basically you put it on the arm, you know, up the upper arm, and you pump it up. You can listen right here. Can you see that?
Your arm disappeared.
Oh, no,
You just turned into an amputee.
Right here.
He's not really dead.
Okay.
Right here, where the arm bends. And you put your
Okay.
stethoscope there and you pump it up to like 200. There's a little dial on it. And then you slowly, there's a little thing, you turn it and slowly let the air out. And you look at the dial and you're listening at the same time with your stethoscope. And when you hear bump, 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 that's your upper blood, the higher number, 120. And then you keep listening and the air's still coming out slowly. And then when it stops and you can't hear the heart beating anymore, that's your lower number, 80. So 120 over 80, that's what, when they say you're 120 over 80, that's what that means. Now, if you're pumping it up and somebody's 200 over, it's the lower number is the more important number, over 120 or above 100, they're having a problem. High blood pressure, hypertension. If it's really low, 60 over 50, 40 or 80 over 60, something like that, then they could be dehydrated. That means their heart is not pumping very hard. They're dehydrated, hypoglycemic, bleeding from somewhere, things like that. And I'm sure the first aid book talks all about the different things. We could do a whole talk on that as well. But that's a pretty simple thing to have. It's really easy to do, to check someone's blood pressure. Scissors. There's all kinds of scissors. But I would have like a bandage. They're called a bandage scissor, which are the big ones that are little curved, they're like this shaped. And you can to cut a few clothes off in an emergency, cut big bandages off. They're just strong scissors, and they've got that angle on them that allows you to create more pressure to really cut hard. And then if you can get some, I'm trying not to use medical terms, iris scissors, but they're like sharp medical, surgical scissors, things like that. They're scissors to remove suture scissors. I would just get an assortment of stuff. And you can soak them if you're, in the betadine or alcohol to sterilize them if it needs to be sterile. But the bandage scissors are important because, it's kind of hard to take someone's clothes off, and if they're unconscious or something. You want to be able to cut them off. And blood, you want to zip right through it, and that'll do it. Some things that you may or may not need, depending on how prepared you want to be, but oxygen. Somebody's got a low blood pressure like that, like I said, that means their heart is not pumping enough oxygen to their brain. They're probably, like out of it or unconscious. They need more, they need supplemental oxygen. And I don't know if you can get that over the counter or not.
Yep, because I've gotten it before. You can actually buy it, going back to the hiking and camping stuff, you can buy it at both like Cabela's as well as Dick's Sporting Goods.
Okay.
Over
Great.
at Cabela's, it's near the camping area, and Dick's Sporting Goods, for some weird reason, they have it by the footwear. but it's marketed toward hikers mainly. And yeah, it comes in little cans that are just like a trigger operated can.
Yeah, I've used those before going skiing out west when you go up in the mountains and you get short of breath. You can use those little ones. Having a tank would be great, just a little oxygen tank. I don't know why my camera's so messed up, but an oxygen tank. And obviously, if you go with the tank, you need to get the tubing and a nasal cannula or something to go over the mouth.
And for those of us that do welding oxygen is not necessarily to the standards of medical oxygen and can have other contaminants in it.
In an emergency grid down, better than nothing though, right? If you need
Probably. It depends on the contaminants.
You can buy like little machines that make oxygen. They it like concentrates the oxygen. You ever gone to one of those oxygen bars and tried that?
I haven't done that. I've heard of them. That requires electricity. That requires electricity, right?
Yeah, it did that years ago. It's really cool. Just wanted to try it.
So it's just an optional thing. Another optional thing is to have a AED, an automatic external defibrillator, like Karen had mentioned. Have something like that.
Is there an affordable way to get those? Because I've looked into getting an AED for a facility before, and they were extraordinarily expensive. But I don't know if there's a good one that's more for like home use.
Maybe someone can check Amazon to see. I mean, I'm sure the portable ones can't be that much because they have them on the walls everywhere. Different.
Yeah, that was the kind I was looking into for a facility, and they were really expensive.
Maybe they've come down.
Yeah, I think we got an option here, Ralph. Check this out.
There's a $79 one. That $3.99. I've seen those. 200.
Something like that. You better have some knowledge or some experience to know how to use it properly.
Well, they're pretty. If you just read the instructions, it's really self-explanatory.
Well, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm going to tell you what. I don't think I'd be putting one of those things on somebody else, not having a doctor standing right there by me.
If somebody,
actually, I've taken a Red Cross course. I used to be certified to teach, and it's pretty simple. It really, really is. The instructions on it tell you exactly what to do. What I'm talking about specifically is the shocking aspect of things. If you're in an emergency at home and you don't have an ambulance, then you don't have the next step. Because after you shock somebody or after you do CPR, if you do CPR on somebody, which you would possibly be doing if you're using an AED machine, you're going to have broken ribs and all kinds of bruising and other issues. And knowing how to follow up is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Like you shock somebody, it's a pretty serious thing.
Oh yeah, no, it's. But if somebody's blue and they're laying on the floor, because they aren't stop eating or they're having an arrhythmia, to slap that thing on, I mean, it does everything. It determines what the rhythm is, the cardiac rhythm. It'll tell you do CPR. I'm going to shock the person or stand back. It talks to you.
A lot of them I've heard too have voice instructions now.
They all do. Yeah, they tell you what they're going to do. So
yeah, so it's got like a speaker and it'll tell you exactly what's going on.
Yeah. Stop CPR, get away. I'm going to shock the person, zap, and then it'll tell you get back on, do CPR. Listen, this is a grid down emergency where there's no picking up the phone and calling 911. There's no ambulance coming. No one's coming to save your life. And even after it's better than nothing. I mean, maybe they'll die after because you don't have all the right stuff to take care of whatever their the original problem is, but it's better than nothing. So, and the batteries last a long time, and they're very powerful. So just something, you don't necessarily have to have it. Let's see. Let's talk about bleeding and cuts. If you look at the first aid kits on Amazon and things like that, 90% of it is bleeding. 90% of the emergencies you take care of, well, maybe 50% will be something to do with bleeding. So I'm not going to list them. I didn't list them all, but there's literally hundreds of types of gauze. You want to have sterile gauze, and lots of it, and lots of different kinds. You can go to CVS and just buy some. Every time you go to CVS, walk out with some. When somebody's bleeding, most bleeding, in medicine, we always say all bleeding stops. One way or another, it's going to stop. And you want to be the one to stop it. Okay. So compression is the first thing you should do. That's literally, it may mean just putting your hand on, just like if you cut your finger, what's the first thing you do? You pinch it, right? You'll hold it until it stops bleeding. Other types of injuries, lacerations, hold pressure on it. You can die from laceration. I've seen people die from scalp lacerations. Literally got in a car accident, cut their scalp. It took too long to get to the emergency room and they died. You can bleed profusely through your scalp. But if somebody was there holding pressure on it, it'll stop sooner or later. It could take holding pressure for a half hour, an hour, and something like your scalp. Unfortunately, the body's response is, if it's bad bleeding, is their blood pressure drops. So there's less blood flow to that area. But that means they've lost a lot of blood. So pressure is the first thing you do. Grab gauze, in an emergency where you can't even get to your kit, take the shirt, whatever you can find, and just press it into the wound. I mean, if it's an abdominal wound, anything, put pressure on it to start. Even arteries, when they are severed and cut, they're muscular. They will contract and stop their bleeding themselves. Veins are different. Veins don't have that muscular wall like an artery does. Remember, arteries take blood from the heart to the rest of the body, and veins bring it back. Veins are really thin and weak, but they'll ooze blood. And most veins, you can stop the bleeding by holding pressure on it. Sometimes if an artery is squirting, and you've held pressure on it for a long time and it's still squirting, you can use a hemostat. And it's kind of hard to teach somebody how to do it. But with wounds, you always hold the pressure, but you can kind of pull your hands back like this. If the cut's here, I can pull back and hold pressure and look in there, and you could see like an artery squirting a little blood. Someone else could take a hemostat and clamp that. And if you were to clamp a blood vessel that's bleeding, you then just take a suture, put it right over the hemostat, and tie a knot with a suture. That'll tie off the vein. That's what we do in surgery. I mean, the vein or artery, whatever's bleeding. It's usually an artery. So there's all kinds of dressings out there, different types of gauze. They have stuff, Ralph, I think you mentioned the other day about some of them are coated with stuff to stop bleeding, some sort of coagulant. But I would have a ton of that, tons of gauze. You can't have too much gauze. And then remember, if it's a wound that you're going to leave that's going to be open, you're going to want to change that gauze every day, maybe twice a day. So let's just talk about a simple laceration, like a deep cut of the finger. You're doing something in the kitchen or in the barn or whatever. It's an emergency. It's dark, and you slice your finger or hand, or it could be anywhere, but let's just say the finger. The first thing you should do is hold pressure on it. The pressure will stop the bleeding. You could use a tourniquet if you wanted to, but hold pressure. the gauze, hold pressure. Now you've stopped the bleeding. Let's say it's been an hour or half hour. You stop the bleeding. What do you do next? You got to clean it. So you irrigate. We have a saying in medicine, the solution to pollution is dilution. I'll never forget that. I learned it in medical school. So the wounds are polluted with bacteria. And how do you get rid of it? You dilute it. So you aggressively squirt betadine, peroxide and water, 50-50 mixture. And you use what's called like a bulb syringe. It's kind of like a turkey baster. You could probably use a turkey baster, a clean one. Because remember, you're sucking up something that's going to sterilize it anyways. Turkey baster, squirt, 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 tons. Okay? Because remember, there's no emergency room, no hospital. You're probably not going to die from the cut. You're going to die from the infection you're going to get. So let's not get an infection. Let's clean the heck out of it. If you can soak it, soak it. 50,
and not using dirty, untreated water.
Yeah, 50-50 peroxide and water. Yep.
Good, clean water.
Bleach in water, whatever. Soak it if you can. A lot of wounds you can't soak, and you'll need to just aggressively squirt water into it. I mean, betadine or peroxide and water. And you could use a lot. The more you use and the more you do it, the less likely they are to get an infection. Okay, and let's say you're not going to close it. You're going to let a lot of wounds you can just leave open. Almost any wound you can leave open. You don't have to suture it closed in an emergency if you don't have sutures or steri strips or something. And some wounds that are dirty, you want to leave them open. Dog bites, things like that, you want to leave them open. We don't suture dog bites. If they rip the skin off, yeah, on a kid's face or something, but just a bite, a punctures, you leave those open. You clean them out as best you can and leave them open.
Why is that?
You'll naturally make its own bandage, right? And you'll get a scab.
What determines whether you would leave it open or not?
The where it's located, what I have on hand, and how they got the laceration or cut or puncture. If it's an animal, they're really hard to keep clean. And you're going to want to, like, if it's a dog bite, let's see, the dog bit your hand, or a horse or something and punctured the skin and you got cut. When you sew it up, you've sewn all the bacteria. You're never going to get it all out with irrigation and soaking, and you've sewn it right in there and it's got nowhere to go, nowhere to ooze out or anything. Your body naturally will heal itself with a cut, laceration, punctures. It all these white blood cells come into the area. They secrete a lot of stuff, and it just squirts up towards the surface, and then you'll make your own bandage with a scab. Okay, so how I would treat like a dog bite is soak the heck out of it, put a clean bandage on it, loose bandage, just some gauze, some tape, antibiotic ointment on it as well. That's why we want a lot of antibiotic ointment. Squirt the heck out of it. And then every day I would, soak it for an hour. Maybe
another good reason to have chickens. I've never had a chicken bite that has gone that deep.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good idea. So, larger lacerations that are like really, that there's a lot of tension in the area. Well, let's just continue with the hand, so you've stopped the bleeding. It's not that deep that you're going to want to, suture it. So you're going to irrigate it, ointment, wrap some gauze around it so the air can still get through the gauze, put some tape to close it, and then soak it every day. Use the betadine. That'll kill everything, if you keep doing that, and just let it heal on its own.
On that note, everyone should probably have some duct tape too, not to apply directly to a wound, but to be able to to wrap stuff with because it's cheap and you can have a lot of it on hand, and so you can change it out quite frequently.
Exactly. Yeah, we talked about duct tape, how important that is.
But not
you
to
can even
apply it
hold the
directly.
skin together. Let's say you didn't have steri strips or anything. You could hold the skin together with another person. One person holds it and the other person wraps, some duct tape, put some gauze on it and wrap some duct tape, hold the edges together as close as you can of the cut.
If you look in horse supplies are fairly inexpensive, and you can get a lot of the wraps and such, because when we wrap legs and such, when there's an injury, I typically will do about a 3 to 4 layer wrap on a horse's leg on how I wrap that. And you can get the self-sticking ace, the old ace bandages. You get the old stretchy ones. Those work really good, and they're not super expensive, but you can get large rolls of say that the gauzy wraps in different sizes. I'd look in horse supplies because that's a real,
might be less expensive too.
It is. I can show you.
Gauze and stuff like that is surprisingly inexpensive. It's not that much. Most of the stuff we're talking about is pretty cheap, other than the AED and the oxygen. If there's a chunk missing of skin, you can't close it, right? If a dog or some animal bit you and took a chunk of skin out, or however you got a cut and it was on an angle and there's a piece missing, those you have to leave open. So you just have to do really good wound care, because like I said, even what Karen mentioned about a gunshot to the chest, it's like, what do you do afterwards? That's what's going to get people.
Screen layout went a little weird again.
Oh, what in the heck? Oh, I grabbed the wrong one. Sorry, guys. There you go.
Yeah, those ace wraps are great. I've got a whole section that I'm going to talk about with ace wraps. I love ace wraps. Yeah,
these are fun. You can they're so much easier because it sticks to itself. Oh, like it goes in the tablecloth here, nice. So okay.
So depending on where the laceration is, you can close it with steri strips.
Oh, there was one there that was at the top of your screen that I just not too long ago saw those things. Those ones on the top left there that they got the picture of.
Yeah.
I just saw those things not too long ago, and those are cool.
Those are steri strips. Yep. We'll use those all the time on the face. And even after you sew somebody, suture a laceration or incision closed, you put the steri strips on as well. And you just want to approximate the skin as close together as you can and put that on there. Gives it an extra layer of protection. And you can put antibiotic ointment right on top of the steri strip. It'll go right through.
That's pretty handy.
There's tourniquets. So if it's an extremity wound, meaning your arm or leg, you can use a tourniquet. And they've got really cool tourniquets now. They're not that expensive. That it's not like a piece of rope or a belt.
My understanding though is that there's some training you really need to get to be able to use a tourniquet effectively, correct?
Well, I don't know that you need a lot of training, but you put it above the wound. Okay, so if you had a cut on your finger, you wouldn't put it up here on your arm and cut the blood supply off to everything. You'd put one on the base of the finger if you can. What works great there is a big, thick rubber band. You twist it around and put a hemostat on it. Now, you can't cut someone's blood supply off. That's not the solution to stop the bleeding permanently. But you can go in there and figure out where it's coming from or hold pressure on it. And you want to release the tourniquet, maybe every minute, depending on where it is, every couple minutes. If it's an arm, you could probably go longer. But if it's on the finger, you can easily kill the finger with your tourniquet. You don't want to leave it on there. It's not the solution. It's a temporary solution to stop the bleeding immediately so you can look in there and take care of the problem. I think you're on mute. Donna, I think you're on mute.
How long does it take to lose a finger after you put a tourniquet on it?
I don't know, but I imagine it's probably 5 minutes. If you put a tourniquet on for longer than 5 minutes, I think you're going to have problems.
Really? Okay, good to know.
But you can let it off, right? So like every couple of minutes, let it off so the blood flows through there. And then you can put it back on tighter.
Okay.
Most of
was
those
told
things
during
don't
a-
need a tourniquet on the finger. You know, most of that type of stuff, you can stop the bleeding, you know, but a deep one to the hand or the wrist, you know, let's say someone tried to kill themselves, cut their wrist, you know, that you're going to need a tourniquet, like right above where the cut is. I put the tourniquet right here and go in there, see what's bleeding. If you have the hemostat, you can put a clamp on it. You can let off the tourniquet a little bit, see where it's coming from. There's an artery in there and a vein. There's a couple of them. And then you can let off, see where it's coming from, go in there, tie it off, put a hemostat clamp on it and tie off. We'll do a whole separate talk about how to do that. Hold pressure on it. But you can save somebody that's cut their wrists if you know if you just have a little bit of knowledge and just a few things on hand. If you don't have a tourniquet, there's always a piece of rope, a cord for a computer, something. And up there, you could leave it on longer than the finger.
Okay.
The further you are in the extremities, the less blood flow you have. That's why diabetics get problems in their legs, because there's not as much blood flow there. Toes, fingers, ear lobes. Those are the places that get infected the most because there's not a lot of blood supply. And they're the ones that you're going to need to take that tourniquet off.
Okay.
More often, loosen it up. Yeah, and that's where you get the infections too. You're very unlikely to have a cut of the face or scalp or something that's going to get infected. Very rare. But even a deep splinter or something in your toe, in your fingertip that's not taken care of, that's the type of thing that you can get a really bad infection and die.
I know a woman who died. She ended up having an ember come out of the fireplace, and it jumped on her, and she ended up dying from it. Got infected, and she died from it.
Where did it hit her in the face? No,
I'm not sure. I don't remember that. I was friends with her daughter.
Terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, so we got to be really careful on all of this stuff. And remember, this is not medical advice unless you're in an emergency situation. This is what do you do when the grid's down and nothing's working?
Yeah, exactly.
I will not be applying like a shock treatment to anyone. I'm going to tell you that. You have to be.
I turn blue and pass out from a heart attack in your house. You better do it.
Yeah. Oh, there you
go. So yeah, there's a quick clot. There's all kinds of different things that they have, to stop bleeding. If it's not severe. But remember, pressure first. Hold pressure on it.
Quick clot. What is that? Do you buy that at the store?
Quick clot? Yeah, I think it's all over the counter stuff.
I think it's a powder, isn't it?
It's a fiber thing. I mean, the stuff that I've used in the past is a fiber, but they've got powder. They've got bandages with it, different clotting stuff on it. It's not like a miracle. If somebody's like shooting blood out, you're not going to pour that on them and it's going to stop. But if you had a tourniquet, if a finger is bleeding real bad, you got the tourniquet on, hold pressure, clean it out, and put that quick clot on it, that'll probably stop the bleeding.
Huh.
I think you probably could find it. I don't know if I've ever seen it over the counter, like in a local pharmacy. But I think you could probably find it in a lot of the prepper, especially military style prepper places online. You might be able to get it through Amazon.
Yeah, check Amazon.
I think I got some of the powder stuff a while back, and I think I got that on Amazon. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, quick clot gauze, $19 on Amazon. Here's one for $18. Bleed stop, $14. Chest seals, wound seals, like $5, $10. This stuff is not expensive. Tourniquet, 2-pack tourniquet, $14.99.
You can probably get a lot of that stuff in a military style kit. They probably have that in various kits for
if you just
those who do a
up,
lot of shooting kind of things.
Look up EMS, medical kit. It's on Amazon. There's just so many of them. I imagine it's cheaper to just buy it separately, but
yeah. When you were talking about a splinter, it reminded me because I helped a friend whose dog got into a porcupine.
Mm-hmm.
And while that might not be likely with a person, if you had a horse or a dog that had an encounter with a porcupine, having a hemostat on hand, or even there's other tools that you can get with that would pinch it. You have to pinch and pull straight out and make sure you get really close to the skin. If it's inside the mouth of a dog, that's another tricky business, but it can be done. And in that dog's case, he was actually pretty willing. It took 3 people, 2 to hold him, and 1 to do the work. But yep, that's one of the tools I had in my first aid kit that I took over there with me.
Donna, I like this page. Like, those are the types of things that you should have. A curved hemostat, a straight hemostat, a mosquito, it's called. You can't have too many of these things. They're really inexpensive. They usually come sterile, or you can easily sterilize them. Like, all this stuff is great to have. You can do so much. Even if you're not used to using something like that, you can figure it out real quick how to do it.
Yep.
Does anyone know? See that fishing hemostat? Does anybody know? I was in Petoskey once, and I was like maybe an intern or resident. We used to go fishing at the dam, salmon fishing, and someone got a hook right through their hand. It was like sticking out, big, huge hook. Does anybody know how to take a fishing hook out?
Well, I can tell you how a neighbor did it at one point in time. He had a 3-prong hook, and it went right through his thing. Yeah. He ended up cutting off the backside, pushing it through the hand, and taking it out. Exactly. By the way, it's like he drank a lot of vodka before he got that through the hand. He was so hungover, it wasn't even funny. But they did get the hook out.
Yeah, because you can't pull it out the other. I mean, you could, but it was going to rip all the muscles out because of the barb on the hook.
Yeah,
pull straight through. So you just cut the shank off and just pull it right through. Whoop,
yeah, like that. Neighbor Greg got all kinds of real man points for that one, but holy Moses, it was a little rough.
So Ralph, how would you take care of that wound? You cut it out. It's a fish hook, like it's nasty. You got it out. You cut the shank, pulled the hook out. How would you take care of that?
I would think iodine first of all.
Yeah, it's iodine, and then peroxide. Peroxide's great because it bubbles, and then soak it. 50-50 peroxide and water. Soak it, squish it around. Get all the water in there and let it soak. You can't close it with it. I mean, there's no suturing that. You want to leave it open. I would put, if you can, put a Band-Aid on it. A little bit of antibiotic ointment and a Band-Aid, or wrap some gauze around it and tape, or depending on where it is, and just let the air get to it, and then soak it every day, maybe twice a day, depending on how nasty the water is.
And if you like to fish with a dog around, again, imagine your dog is going to go for your line, or you reach back before you cast and he jumps up and gets it in his nose or in his tongue, or he steps on the line with his feet. And do you know how to handle that? Because it's another aspect, again, like the porcupine with the behavior. And now you've got some teeth that are going to bite you if you have to deal with the mouth. And like I said, with him, we were able to we kind of created a muzzle with a stick in his mouth that held his mouth open enough that we could pull out the porcupine needles from inside the mouth. And also on the bottom of the paws and all around the paws. But if you've got a dog, again, the Red Cross does have, and there are many other first aid books and classes for pets.
Great. How about a bloody nose? Does anybody know how to take care of a bloody nose?
Pinch it and lean forward.
Okay, so this is, everybody know, don't lean forward, but
That's what I was told in first aid.
So people pinch their nose up here. It does nothing. It's bone. Okay. 99% of the bleeding is going to be from the septum down here. You pinch the soft part of your nose. Okay. And you lay down, your head elevated a little bit. Leaning forward, you're causing more blood flow to the area.
I think the reason they said that was because you don't want maybe this was a case of bleeding for someone who is going to have that blood running down their airway.
Yeah. So if it's a posterior nosebleed way back there, we can talk about that, but that's pretty rare, and you'd rather just swallow it, so lay down with your hand, pinch it. It'll stop in 10 minutes. If you're on aspirin or something, it may take longer, but that bleeding will stop on its own. You can even shove some of that clotting stuff in there. You just pinch it. But
okay.
A posterior nosebleed is a really dangerous thing, but it's very, very rare. So I'm not even going to talk about how to take care of posterior nosebleed. Chances are the person's not going to make it if they get that, but just pinch it. And if you need to look in there, that's where that headlight's really great. Pinch it, lay down with your head elevated a little bit. That's lowers your blood pressure. And usually, does anyone know what causes nosebleed? The most common cause?
Nope.
Elevated blood pressure and dryness. So when we in the emergency room, when we see nosebleeds, they almost always happen in the winter, very rarely in the summer. If somebody bit their tongue or had some kind of thing in their mouth, you can hold pressure on the tongue if you had to. If it's a big laceration or something, it's pretty rare to have that. But you can pinch the tongue. You got your headlight, you can see where to look, and just put some gauze between your fingers and just pinch it. Remember, pressure is the most important thing to stop bleeding. You know what the best surgical instrument in the world is? Your finger. Your fingers. Because you can stop bleeding. You can do everything with it. It's very versatile. It doesn't cost anything.
While we're at the nose, can you talk a little bit about especially children getting objects in the nose? Those hemostats could possibly become important again in there, but what else is most common, and what is the most common way to deal with it if a simple blowing or manipulation outside the nose doesn't do the trick?
Yeah, well, if you have something lodged in there, it's usually a bead,
or a piece of corn.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's when you look at your children and go, I really wish I would have had smarter children. And
kids just do that, man. It happens all the time.
Yeah, one of my kids poked corn up his nose and took him into the doctor, got the corn out of his nose, went home, and another one thought it was a great idea, and I'm like, what is wrong with you?
Oh boy.
Donna feeds cream corn the next time.
Yeah, right. So then what do? I pack up number 2. I'm like, just because that person doesn't mean that you should do it.
Yeah.
If you need a little attention, just say so,
Well, a foreign body in the nose or in the ear, there's an instrument called a nasal cannula that you can put in there to open it up. But let's just say you don't have something like that. You could just do this type of thing. You got your headlight, and you can look in there, guarantee you can see it. And you use your tweezers. We're just going to call them tweezers. That's not what we call them in medical, but you put the forceps in their tweezer, and you can grab it and just pull it straight out. Same with the ear, come straight out. And if you leave it in there, they're going to get an infection, get really sick. So you want to get it out.
Would that be a good application for like the plastic tweezers?
Yeah, I mean, whatever you got, you're gonna want something with a nice fine tip, not the big fat things that you'd use for your slivers or eyebrows. That's why an assortment of those instruments is just going to be really great having some, an assortment. Amazon probably has an assortment of things, but different size things.
See if they got more of them here.
Some of those are probably even less expensive than what they're listing there, because it looks like that's the Canadian version of Amazon. So it's probably in Canadian dollars.
Yeah. So, I mean, this stuff is not that expensive. Just have an assortment of things. And remember, we're talking about not being able to go to the doctor or the emergency room. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff.
It's still supposed to be tweezers, but lab tweezers. They didn't
Try typing in force up.
I just clicked on what was on the side there. So
yeah, try force up. Let's talk. So that's bleeding, and we can talk more about bleeding, and suturing and all that stuff one day. We can find some videos I can show you. How about bones and muscle strains? Broken bones, bruised bones, pulled muscles, all that type of stuff. Is that forceps?
That's what it came out. That's what it came out.
Well, there's some at the top. I just saw some right there. Of course, they call them tweezers.
Yeah,
but it didn't show up when you typed in tweezer.
Yeah, it's funny.
So, the lacerations are one thing. The other is going to be, bones, broken bones, strains, springs, all that stuff. The number one best thing are ACE wraps. I love using ACE wraps because even a partial fracture or something, or fractures, ACE wraps can put pressure on everything, right down to the bone. Can't put your hand around the bone, but a nice ACE wrap, you want to put it on tight enough that it's going to help immobilize the area, or it gives support to the area, but not so tight that it cuts off. You don't want it to become a tourniquet. So you want to look at, if you're going to put it on an extremity, you want to look to make sure that there's still blood flow. And you can usually pinch the finger to look at the nail and see, it blanches, turns white, and then it fills back up with blood. If it's on so tight that it's staying white, then it's too tight. But ACE wraps work great, for sprains.
And you wrap from the end of the limb toward the heart, correct?
I guess if you're going to push blood through the veins, but I usually start above and go down. And I never really thought about it because I'm not putting it on so tight that it's going to stop blood flow.
What I do with horses' legs is I start kind of in the middle, and I'll go down, and then I'll head up, and then if I take a second one, I'll start here and I'll go up and then go down.
Yeah, and you want to go a few inches above the area and a few inches below, and it actually just becomes like an extra ligament. You can still move, but it gives it so much support. That's why weightlifting belts work so well, and knee things, when you've got bad knees. It takes a lot of the tension off the joint. So I love ACE wraps, and they come in all different kinds and sizes, and just have a bunch of them. And they're also really good to hold bandages on for lacerations, cuts and stuff. Sometimes you want to splint something. You can't usually put an ACE wrap on someone's finger. You want to splint it. Toes, you can splint those. I'm not talking broken bone, I'm talking strains. And you want to put, in a finger, you want to put it in a natural curve like this. And they make splints for your finger. You can buy a whole kit of them, but you're probably not going to do that at home. but you can get an aluminum splint that you can cut. You mold it to the right size. And are those aluminum? You just get it's an aluminum, a long thing, maybe a foot long, and it's got foam on one side, and you can create a splint with it. You can cut it to the size you want.
He needs to be trimmed while you got it.
What was that, Karen? We lost you.
Try aluminum splint.
Okay. Hey, Karen, what's going on there with the sound?
Oh, sorry, I thought I muted myself.
We heard everything.
My husband caught Monkey, one of the birds that needed to get her wings trimmed. I'm watching out the window. She got outside of the pen. Remember, we penned the chickens in. And I said, she's one that needs her wings trimmed. Bring her inside. And she says, I need help. I can do it by myself. But she's Monkey. She's she's special. But he tossed her back in. I'm like, no.
So there's
they have long splints, aluminum splint that's just, it doesn't have all that stuff on it. It's just a long piece of that foam with aluminum on one side.
Oh, here it is, right here.
You cut it to the size you want and bend it exactly how you want it. And that works great for fingers and toes. And you would use tape or something to hold it on. You want to immobilize the joint. Other types of splints, if you had a broken leg or something, or a broken arm, I'm not the best at orthopedics like that, but there's no medical around. There's nothing you can do. You can create a splint. You can use cardboard. You can use a piece of wood. You want to immobilize the area, a shoulder, something like that. That's why I use a sling, but you want to immobilize the area, and you can put an ace wrap around it to hold it in place. Some breaks are really bad and they bleed, and hopefully the compression from an ace wrap will help with that.
Yeah, don't do what my husband did. He got hit by a tree. He was out like hunting trees and broke his ankle and just decided to pack it full of leaves and snow and lace his boot up and go put his foot up for 3 days.
Oh boy. Yeah. But
yeah, don't do that.
if you can help it. But if you can have anything, if the grid is down and there's no emergency room, there's nowhere to go, putting snow and ice on it and wrapping it up real tight and splinting it, it may be your only option.
It actually worked.
Yeah. And if it's really broken, and depending on how the bones heal, it may have a defect there, but at least it'll heal. So not medical advice.
Not medical advice.
Or the emergency room. But I'm talking if there's no emergency room.
And we wonder why men die younger than women.
Yeah. Ice, those ice packs, those cold packs, have some of those. It's a chemical compound in there for sprains and strains, contusions. Put ice on it. They also have, like, if you pull your back or pull something, there's topical lidocaine. There's hundreds of things out there, that you can get over the counter that you should have just in case. But even a strained back, to put a big, 6-inch ace wrap and wrap it around your back and belly and nice and tight, it's going to help a lot. So ace wraps come in different sizes, have a bunch of them, just like the bandages have a bunch of ace wraps. And tape, I didn't mention tape, but you got to hold the ace wrap or the bandages, whatever you're using, in place. And, there's a couple different types of tape: surgical tape, there's cloth tape, and then paper tape. But you want to have a few rolls of that tape. It's white. If you may have to do a lot of walking. Your life may change dramatically, and you can get blisters. A blister can literally can stop you from walking to get water because it's bleeding and in so much pain. So having some moleskin that you can put on it, petroleum jelly. We're just thinking ahead of what can happen.
I'm making a list here.
Oh, good. Okay. Because a lot of this stuff is coming randomly.
There's a thing that for immobilizing stuff, there's a thing I saw the other day about how they're starting to use 3D printed casts for broken arms and stuff as an alternative to, the old style plaster or even the like fiberglass ones.
Yeah.
You can actually, for some of that stuff with 3D printing, if you've got a 3D printer, you can actually design up your own stuff, and then it's also washable. You can keep it clean because it's just plastic.
Yeah.
And,
I there's all kinds of stuff, for broken bones, but I'm just assuming you can't get on the internet, do 3D printing or anything.
Well, there's there's one guide I just found about how to design one up yourself if you need it, and that's something that could be done completely off grid as long as you've got electricity and you've got 3D printer filament.
Yeah, well, I guess you would need one for depending, on what bone you broke, a finger, your hand, wrist, your arm, lower arm.
Well, they actually go through the process of modeling it to custom fit it to somebody, and it looks pretty easy.
Or if you have a 3D scanner, you could scan it.
Yep.
Scan it and print off the scan.
So I'm just, what I'm thinking is, this is back in the 1800s, what did they do? They definitely, I don't even think they did casting back then. It's you splint it, you make a very sturdy, good splint. And it's the same thing. You're just, it all is for the same thing. You're trying to immobilize the area.
And hopefully set it so it's going to heal properly.
Yeah, because you don't want to move it because the muscles are pulling on that bone. If you move it, so you want to immobilize the extremity so it doesn't move. Even having one of those, slings would be good for arm.
It's fairly common in veterinary medicine. I just know because I've seen the shows on TV and I've seen it many times where a dog will come in with an unknown history and it's got a funny limp on it, and they do some x-rays and they find out that it's just had a previous injury, a broken bone that just healed the way it was, and they're getting around. It's not great. It probably creates arthritis in that or another limb or their spine, but they can still get around. Yeah. So even if it's not perfect, your body will adjust.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it'll heal. Hopefully it'll heal, and bones heal. Everything heals in the body. So
on that note, another thing that I can say, don't recommend this at all, but it's kind of cool to see how to do it. There's a guy on YouTube called William Osman that built his own x-ray machine.
No, really?
Yeah.
Okay, now you got me curious. How do you build? All right.
I posted a link in the chat.
Oh, of course you did. Hang on a minute. Let me check. I gotta see this.
I imagine it must be.
So do not do this at home.
Yeah, don't do this at all.
Don't do this at home like this guy did it at home.
Okay, so Ralph has posted a metric ton of as I'm sitting here listening to this of links that I was completely ignoring. Sorry. All right, hang on a minute. This is kind of interesting.
This is the reason why I've canceled my doorbell camera subscription. This brand new subscription.
Okay. Okay, 17-minute video. Don't do this at home, people, please. And say, oh, Brandenburg said to do this, but check this out.
Hi, I'm William, and I'm $69,210.32 in medical debt. Well, it was fun while it lasted, little Willies, but I'm gonna have to start selling all my stuff. To
If
pay
you
this
skip it in a
medical
little
bill.
ways, you
Anybody
can
wants to solicit
probably skip some of it.
Okay. See how far he gets through his little.
This was drawn by me, and it's embroidered. It's
A cat in the litter box, okay, Ralph.
Woo! I'm only $2,500 in debt instead of $60.
Okay.
Hospitals treat uninsured people the exact same way. What you're supposed to do is the same thing that insurance does with hospitals. You fight them. You tell them.
Okay, this guy's he's on a mission.
Bada bing, bada boom. Got yourself an X-ray tube. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking, William, you're not nearly responsible or smart enough to be playing with hype.
Yeah, that was my first response.
Typical
No,
man.
he actually, if you skip kind of toward the end a little bit, he actually, I think, at one point, X-rays his hand.
Oh my gosh. All right, so we gotta do this.
And at one point, he also brings his wife in to see his.
There's his wife. Okay, hang on.
On top of that, and then we put a subject like maybe real human finger bones catching versus still. And when we blast X-ray through it, we should see the film glow with the shadow of finger bones casting.
Okay, this is
beans, canned tuna. Nope. X-rays are allowed for medical purposes. And the small number of stray X-rays that do end up leaving the setup and hitting me or anybody near here are nothing compared to getting on an airplane, getting a CT scan, getting an X-ray, or just living your life and being exposed to background radiation.
okay. This guy's wild.
Yeah, he's kind of. You watch some of his other videos, and he's kind of nuts.
He's a little nuts. So.
Yeah, building your own X-ray sounds like you get in trouble for that. Dirty bomb X-ray.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a good idea at all.
Yeah.
But it's out there, guys. So there you go.
Well, the nice thing with an X-ray tube like that is that it's only actually creating X-rays as long as you're supplying high voltage to it. So it's not something that's like an ambient radiological concern.
Okay, different type of element.
Okay, we all know that Ralph's crazy now.
So heart, let's go. Keep going. Heart and lungs. The AED.
Kind of backwards airway breathing circulation today.
Yeah. CPR, right? The ABC. You should know how to do CPR. Take a basic CPR class. And, you know, to help with CPR, there's different types of nasal airways and oral airways you can use. I'd recommend having at least aspirin. If somebody's having a heart attack, give them aspirin right away. Nitroglycerin for chest pain. If you can get it, that's definitely going to be by prescription, I would think. Well, the other thing you can use in the nose, I just came to mind, is Afrin for a nosebleed. Because
you recommended that for some other stuff too, so that's probably
how that works is it causes vasoconstriction, so it causes the blood vessels to constrict. So when they constrict, there's less bleeding. So you can spray the nose and then pinch it. Eyes, something getting in your eye, pretty common. There's a thing called an eye wash to wash out your eye. Very inexpensive. Good to have on hand. Bee stings, things like that. There's bee sting cream.
You can get the bottle of eye wash by like the Bausch and Lomb or whatever brand eye care.
Yeah.
I've got some of that as part of my first aid at home.
Yeah. Good idea. And, you know, and just having, you know, if there's a foreign body in the eye, do you know how to take care of a scratch? You're walking through the woods, you know, you got a stick, something scratches your eye. I mean, it's a very painful thing. You scratch the cornea. It hurts bad. How you take care of that, assuming there's not a foreign body in there. If there's a foreign body, you could pick it out with your tweezer or just a Q-tip or something. But you put ointment in the eye, on the eyeball, so it doesn't dry out. Close the eye and put a patch on it. Tape the eye shut.
And then ideally,
an iPad on it, and in 24 hours, it'll be better.
And then ideally, you'd want to paint a skull and crossbones on the eye patch and wear a tricorn hat just to be cool.
Yeah, of course. Be the pirate.
What kind of ointment would you put in your eye for a scratched cornea?
There's eye ointment. It's just for, and you gotta be careful with the eye. Yeah, just an antibiotic eye ointment. It doesn't even need to have an antibiotic.
You can get that over the counter also.
Yeah.
Got it.
And
Also,
go ahead.
my husband went to the ER once. He had something in his eye he could not flush out. And this is when we went to the hospital. They had a little thing there, a stanchion that you're supposed to look into to take your temperature. And I'm like giving an eye roll. And they recommended mask, but they didn't force it. And I was like, yes, the scamdemic is over here. But the doctor was great. He showed me where it was. It was like a little speck. And he said, watch this. And he had me leaning over with him. And he took a Q-tip and just lightly touched the Q-tip. And it grabbed onto that piece of dust or whatever it was up in his eyelid, plucked it right out. So that was like the shortest ER visit, the simplest thing, but it did the trick. Boy, I learned something. Never would have thought of using a Q-tip that way.
Yeah, the lower eyelid is pretty easy, with a Q-tip. You can take that Q-tip and make a fine point, pull on it, the cotton, and make a fine point. You can just kind of tease anything out. The upper lid, you can break the tip off of a Q-tip and take the stick and you put it right here, and you grab the eyelashes and you can flip the whole lid will flip right over the upper lid, and then you can get it off that. So if you don't see it in the foreign body down here, it's going to be in the upper, and you can actually flip it over. There's probably a video on that somewhere on YouTube.
That's cool.
But yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm learning a lot today. Because I have not done, besides, patching up horses, I can go into horse medicine, which you can actually use most of the things on animals, on people.
Yeah.
And so, which is kind of interesting. I know all those kind of things, but this is really informative for me. I love this.
Great. I'll probably think of hundreds of other things, but I can't think off the top of my head. But yeah, getting the foreign body out of the eye. If you scratch the cornea, because when you're blinking and you feel that terrible feeling, the cornea is the fastest growing. It's actually skin. It's skin in the entire body. So it heals very, very quickly. But
that's well. I did not know that.
You want to close the eye, and you want to put ointment in there because you don't want the eye to dry out. That can cause a permanent problem. And close it for 24 hours. It'll be better. What else? Tongue depressors. If you need to look in someone's mouth or something, it's good to have. I was recently on an airplane. They're like, is there a doctor on board? I'm like, oh, shit. No one reads their names. It's always the last. I'm like, all right. They're like, oh, bring me back and go back. And there's this guy like... in his chair, just a big guy, and he's just shaking like that, and total seizure, can't talk nothing. And what do you do? Does anybody know?
Ask him for his medical insurance card.
You can't talk, so you just take it out of his pocket. Well, in my experience, and that's a
Karen.
second time this has actually happened to me. I'm like, get orange juice and sugar. And I took one of those little things of orange juice. I poured like 10 packs of sugar real fast, and I held his mouth open. I just poured it in there, and he's like, oh my God, what happened? So almost always it's somebody that's hypoglycemic.
Really? I did not know that about seniors.
Diabetic, hypoglycemic, and they're on a long flight and they're just not eating. And if it's so, the first thing you want to do is make sure they're safe if they're actually seizing like that. So you want to lay them down, which is very difficult in an airplane. But you want to lay them down if it's just a seizure from the brain, and the person usually will have something on their wrist. It says they have seizures or they're diabetic. This guy didn't have anything. But you would lay them down so they're not going to hit anything, and you may want to protect their mouth, so they don't bite their tongue. But I just could tell, like, this guy's hypoglycemic. He was clammy, cold, and I just poured that in, and literally within 15 seconds, 10 seconds, just popped right out of it. So
I heard another great way to do that. I keep some packets of honey in my first aid kit.
Packets of what?
Honey. It doesn't take up much space. It's portable, and it's not likely that you're going to choke somebody, like pouring liquid down their throat, because that's, of course, a concern.
Yeah.
Especially if somebody's seizing.
Yeah.
But you can smear a little bit of honey inside the mouth, and it'll do the same thing.
Yeah, they have glucose gel you can buy. Most diabetics carry something like that in their little kit. Honey, they just need some sugar. Oftentimes when people don't feel well and they're cold and clammy and they haven't eaten, ask them if they've eaten, they haven't eaten. A little sugar helps them a lot. What else? I don't know what else.
Well, that's it. This is
everything. I'm sure there's lots of other stuff that can go wrong, emergency wise.
Well, that's
a lot. Talk about stroke.
Talk about what?
What do you do in an emergency scenario where you don't have a hospital, but someone's got symptoms of stroke?
I would check their blood pressure, seeing if they're hypertensive. If you can lower their blood pressure, it'd be a good idea no matter what kind of stroke they're probably having. But see, there's two types of strokes. There's one where there's a bleed into the brain, and the other type of stroke is where there's a blockage, like a heart attack type thing. So it's very difficult to make that diagnosis without a CAT scan. So I would just try and maintain their blood pressure, maintain their vitals the best you can. And just, I guess you just got to hope and pray for them. You wouldn't want to give them aspirin or something if they're having a bleed. It'll make it worse. But if it wasn't a bleed, an aspirin would help. But you just don't want to take that chance. So I would monitor them and try and maintain their vital signs. There's not a lot you're going to be able to do. Some of these things that could happen, are going to be catastrophic if there's no hospital or EMS or anything.
Well, and I think
you don't have an X-ray in your garage. You don't have Ralph building you an X-ray in your garage.
I think it's where you got to know your neighbors and know who are the if you've got a doctor that or a nurse that around you. I mean, that would be my first call on most of this, is if you do have a network of people who are involved in healthcare in some way, either a nurse or a physician's assistant or a doctor. We had a doctor right next door to our house a few years ago. He was an emergency room doctor, and was really handy.
Perfect.
Super handy. Real nice guy too. So that he doesn't live there any longer, but he was a great guy and was real helpful to the neighborhood and such.
Yeah, knowing a doctor would be just great in your area. Most doctors will help anybody. Well,
guys, I think we filled this 2 hours pretty well, which was wonderful. I mean, this is a lot of information, David, and I really appreciate that so much. I mean, this is a topic that I think the rest of us, Karen's got some training, but I can tell you probably Ralph and I, we would be doing, the leave sticks and spit on it a few times, wrap her up, see what's happening there,
It'll probably work anyway. So
yeah, or throw something that's horse medicine on it, because horse medicine works on pretty much everything.
Yeah, so, there you go. Yeah, we haven't talked about prescription stuff that I'd recommend having. Maybe we can do that next time.
How do you find prescription stuff?
How do you get it?
Yeah.
Find a doctor that'll write it for you.
To have it on hand.
There are some of these companies that you can that you can just do a telemedicine thing and they'll get you a kit.
What was that wellness? There was something that we looked at before.
Yeah, that thing's a scammy thing. Like
the wellness one is?
Yeah, I think so.
Flynn has one he's recommended.
I mean, that's an option. Any of those things are an option to get on.
That's probably worthy of an entire episode, though.
Yeah, we should talk about prescription stuff to have on hand. You know, obviously having your own prescriptions, as much of it as you can get. If they're really important, you should have them. But we could talk about stuff that you just absolutely should have. You know, like prednisone, stuff like that. Antibiotics, just really important. They'd be worth more than gold. Somebody's sick and dying, your antibiotics are worth, a fortune.
Sure. There's some, we should go through the natural ones too, that those of us who don't have classical medical training have used, because I think people would be really shocked at how much stuff is out there that truly that God has just put right in front of us. We just don't know where to find it. Like aspirin comes from willow. If you soak willow bark, especially the ends, you can use the ends of a willow tree and soak that. That's not only is that a rooting compound for plant propagation, because you can use that to root plants for propagation.
The end of the where the leaves grow.
Yeah, use the end or the bark, and you can use that the ends of the leaves where you take a branch and you take the end off, coil it up in some water, put some water on it, and let it set. Okay. You can use that for plant propagation, but you can also use that sort of a compound as an aspirin. That's where it first came from, was willow trees.
Salicylic acid.
Yeah, that's where I get my weird knowledge from, is that knowing the way things used to be done in the old ways.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And hopefully people will be more prepared if they watch this type of thing, and you can buy for $10, 100, 200 aspirins, but in an emergency situation where you didn't have it, it's great to know how to make it naturally. It's definitely comes from nature, aspirin. So
I think a good hybrid. It's like I always wish that doctors would work together in bringing all forms of healthcare together, whether it's alternative or or the classical, let's say the classical type of medical training, and work together for more of a holistic way to treat a person.
Not many doctors do that, but the ones that do, like this guy by me, Dr. Brownstein. I don't know how much time we have, but this guy, you can't even get in to see him. He's so busy, and it's natural stuff and medical. It's a combination of the two. But I did go there. I finally got in. I pulled my doctor card, and it literally took months. The parking lot was packed of cars, and I got in there, waited forever, made up something. I don't remember what I said, to get, something, sore throats or something, and he's like, order some blood tests and this and that. And then he checks off this thing, and he's like, here, take this to the desk. And you go through this door, and you're in a pharmacy. It's his own pharmacy filled with all natural stuff. And they pull all the stuff off depending on the things he wrote down, like a prescription for it, and swipe your credit card, and you walk out with this bag of salt and this stuff and this, mineral. And it's like $100. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. Once you know how the stuff works, you can either make things yourself out of what God's provided on the earth, and most of it works relatively well. There's the ones that are pushing the vitamins and the supplements right now, you got to ask yourself some questions on them. And quite honestly, a lot of the supplement companies are owned by the pharmaceutical companies, and the things that actually work, they've made it prescription based from the supplements, but not all of them. I mean, there's things that if you have, say, like a lot of plaque in your arteries, I know several things that will strip the veins, and they do work. And so, all of those things, or even like the clotting or Alzheimer's or such, there are things that work to assist. I'm not going to say the C word, the cure word, because, but there are things that you should look into and see what the evidence is that supports the fact that they do work. And I think we should get into this more too as we go. Like if you need something, where do you find it on the planet? Where do you find the vitamins? In Michigan here, we have a lot of spruce trees around. Spruce tea is a wonderful, wonderful place to find vitamin A and vitamin C. So you don't have to worry about not having the food or the nutrition to keep your body running. You can do that. This is something that's a doable thing. But people have to make sure if there's ever a crisis, the first thing you do is not panic. Choke your emotions down and go into calm and peace. God will take care of things. And then you'll start thinking. Whenever you get into a crisis, I think that's another thing we should talk about is communication, not just communicating with each other, but communication, how you communicate when you go into a crisis, how you become in control of a situation that's out of control, how to give yourself peace so that you're actually thinking and not reacting. And it's kind of a difference between, say, like a horse and a mule. One of the reasons why they use mules in the Grand Canyon is a mule will stop and plant and look around and assess whether there's even a real threat or not. And I mean, we can use that right now from everything we're seeing in the news. Most of it, it's a lie.
Yeah.
So plant and don't move. A horse, if a chipmunk, scurries on the wall, they'll jump right to their death because they're afraid. They're too reactionary. They react and they stop thinking. And that's one of the biggest things with people is you have to keep yourself in a mindset in crisis that you do not react. Stop. And just, even if it's just for a split second, stop and get your emotions in check, because that's what's going to do you in every time. And when you see communications on the internet and the way people like attack each other, those people are truly out of control. I don't know if they're demon possessed. I don't know what they are, but they're crazy. And you cannot make a good decision when you go into a reactionary mindset, no matter what it is.
With all this stuff, like the bleeding, like I said, some people would be like, oh my God, what am I going to do when the person's bleeding out, but if you're thinking straight, you're looking, take a breath, go put pressure on it, hold pressure on the area, whatever it is, anywhere in the stomach, chest, arm, it's just thinking and taking your time to think about something instead of being hysterical.
Well, and if you think about it ahead of time, and let's just say this is what I think we're going to continue to do on Fridays, is go through things like off the grid medicine, off the grid food preparation. I actually built you guys want to see I built this a while back. You want to see my off the grid trailer? Okay, here we go. I'm going to play it for a minute. I can redo that last tile. I made that probably a year ago, and that's sitting in the queue because I went over some things with another gal that does off the grid type things, like and food prep like I do, and that I'm really interested in. But I really do think that all of this stuff is so valuable. How to do things and pretty much MacGyver your way through anything if you have to, if there's nobody there. But the way to make it work is you got to think about it ahead of time. You can't, when you get in that situation and you haven't taken the time to prepare or to think through what would happen if, and go through all of those things in your life that you're used to, what would happen if things came to a screeching halt? But how are you going to deal with the normal things? first thing is that I can tell you right now, most of us could do without about 90% of the things we have in our lives. And, and honestly, we would have a better quality of life.
I think that's one of the big benefits that came out of the whole COVID thing, is actually forcing people to come to terms with their lack of preparedness.
Mm-hmm.
If we come to a screeching halt, which I believe we're going to, there's no way that things aren't going to radically change. Now, I've been praying for it for years. I'm like, let's tear Babylon right down. God's going to do it. He's going to tear it down. We don't have to do a thing. But to watch this satanic system with the globalists, like, say, oh, I don't know, the DeVosses and the other vax pushers and crap out there.
Oh yeah.
And that use God's name in vain in order to say that we're Christian, and they're not.
They're not.
You can't be a murderer. I don't care what name you come under. And I mean, listen to what Jesus said. Jesus said, don't listen to people that preach a Jesus other than the one that's here.
Yeah.
I mean, that was pretty clear to us. But you know, there's a lot of things that we can do ahead of time so that when we get in that, we not only prepare our minds that it's going to happen. Okay, so now we know it's going to happen. All the economic indicators are there. They're all there. And the crash, if, you know, I will say this right now. You guys can hold me to this and later and say, hey, Brandenburg, you were wrong. But
let's hope we have to.
Yeah, let's hope you have to. But honestly, I think we're going to see things melt down significantly.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, well, you steady yourself against the storm. Steady yourself against the storm. Know it's coming. And once you know that things are going to go in that direction, you can get your sea legs on a little bit, prepare for the hit that's going to come. And be prepared. But not only that, not only think about yourself, but think about your family, your friends, your community, the people around you. The first step, I would tell this to everyone. The first step, if things melt down, if we get EMP'd, I was listening to somebody who's been in intelligence a very long time at the Constitution Party, and I'm going to have this guy on. He's a carrier pilot. He was a carrier pilot in Vietnam, and he puts out a report, and his entirety of his thing was with what he knows that we are going to have an absolute crash, and it's going to be epic. It's going to make 29 look like child's play. Okay, so what do? First thing is get out there and start talking to your neighbors and people around you and get and assess the skills that everybody has so that you can build a team.
Yeah.
And now, you know, like when BLM, honestly, I'm going to tell you this right now. When BLM was rioting in Grand Rapids, we've got 4 cops in our area, our neighborhood. They had a perimeter. They said, hey, we got all of us in Brandenburg there. You know, they're like, we're going to be okay here because, you know, if somebody would have come in to do damage into our neighborhood, I'm going to guarantee you the guys that were involved in that, plus one rogue Brandenburg would have really, things would have gotten serious real quick. Yeah. And but to know the people around you, know their skill set, know who they are. You know, you might have somebody in your neighborhood that is an epic prepper that is say, okay, this is how we're going to deal with human waste. This is how we're going to deal with water. And it would be really smart to do that before a crash. Of course. You know, I think one of the things I want to talk about is how do you get. I've been actually working on this a really long time, in bringing semi-fulls of food or supplies into an area. That's actually pretty easy to do when the stores are closed. Don't worry about it. There's other options out there. You don't have to panic. You don't have to be afraid. And so that with that said, there's a lot of things that we can go through with this off the grid living. And I think it will be absolutely wonderful and epic and probably bring more blessings into our lives than we've seen for decades.
Yeah.
And even if stuff doesn't crash, you know, for a while, even if this is something that takes a while to happen, a lot of this stuff is still stuff that is really helpful stuff to be prepared for and have on hand anyway, just some, so you don't have to go to the store every single day for stuff, you know, and or you get something where, like, we're coming up on tornado season here, you know, that knocks out parts of the grid quite a bit of the time. You know, are you prepared for that? We have snowstorms in Michigan that kind of immobilize people in a lot of cases. Are you prepared for that? You know, there's a lot of situations that even less serious stuff than a total grid collapse, if you're prepared for it, you got nothing to worry about during that, you know? And in the event of a total grid collapse, perfect. You're prepared for that too. You can be, it takes a lot of the, it reduces the severity of natural disasters a lot if you have some of this prep work done beforehand.
Yep.
I think it would be smart for everybody to go out and buy several cases of soup. So, you know, just have some soup as an insurance policy, because you can pop, you know, some of the ones like the Progressos, they've got the little flip top on it, that sort of thing that you don't really have to heat up. I mean, we're used to that, but you don't have to do that. And you can eat it right out of the can, and you know, so you've got some things that sustain you. And peanut butter and honey, you can survive a long time on a couple of tablespoons of peanut butter a day if you have to.
Right.
So all of those things, and if we all work together to get ready for this, we could really take care of each other, and it will be okay. Well, you know, how did people live for centuries and centuries and centuries? I mean, how did they live without the modern conveniences that really came forward in the last couple hundred years? Or maybe there was other technology. I tend to think that there was other technology that we don't even know about because they hid a lot of it. There's too much evidence of it. But you know what? People have lived in many different scenarios for many, many years, and doesn't mean that it's bad. And one thing my husband said recently is, he said, it was kind of sobering. It was a very sobering comment. He said, "Do you realize?" He said that our generation is, because we're the old guys in the room, right? He said our generation is actually we're the tail end of people that live on the planet that can literally improvise or know how to do all of these lost arts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So all you old guys out there, get ready to step up, because I know all of you know how to do things.
Yeah. The younger generation is going to have a heck of a hard time if this happens.
You know, that's one of the things, though, that I really loved about when the whole steampunk thing came in, you know, I don't know, probably 15 years ago now, where it really got kind of big as a subculture for younger people. That's one of the things that I loved about that, is how much it really promoted, that kind of really kicked off the whole maker movement, because there was so much of that stuff about the whole steampunk thing that was like rediscovering Victorian era making skills, fabricating both, you know, clothing, physical objects, making them out of leather, making them out of getting back into doing some of the textile stuff, sewing your own clothes, getting into doing more of the metalworking stuff. All of those skills from the Victorian era kind of started getting revived a little bit and rediscovered by some of the younger people. And it was really kind of neat to see that skill set reinvigorate, and how many of those people actually started talking to their elders about how this stuff was done back in the day. It was really kind of cool to see. And then that kicked off the maker movement about, once again, rediscovering how to make things.
Yep.
All good things. So, well, guys, you guys have any last words? Let's go ahead and say a prayer and then move to our day.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Any last words?
I'm good.
You kind of beat me to the punch, but I'll reiterate, I was thinking the same thing. We've talked a number of times about how important and valuable it is to train. And I just want to add that one of the best things I did as part of that first aid training I did, this was with the Red Cross. They started to get involved with the disaster services. That's what I was aiming for. And many years ago, I had an instructor that would put us in a scenario. And so she had a couple of scenarios set. One was in a parking lot where she simulated a car accident, and another one was in another room. She said that a sheet on the floor was to represent water. And she didn't tell us ahead of time what the setup was. She just said, go down the hallway. And I started heading down the hallway and realized suddenly the rest of the class was behind me because they were already afraid. And they didn't want to be responsible for noticing things. And we failed the test because nobody noticed that we were standing in water and the victim was electrocuted. So we were doing airway breathing circulation and all that. But
I like the idea of scenarios.
That's the thing. So if you go through first aid training with somebody else and then quiz each other, you have a certain scenario. You don't have to have a dummy out in the yard or something, but throw out a scenario and can they take you through the steps? And that's the thing I liked about the Red Cross first aid guide or their classes, is because they make it so regimented. It's easy to remember. You can even get little booklets that come with basic first aid kits that you can just pop in your car or something. So if you're on an accident scene and you're freaking out and your adrenaline's running, can you think clearly? If you're not quite there, pull out the little guide. What's the first step? And if you practice those scenarios with each other, those types of quizzes can help get you in the mindset so that, like Donna was saying, if something happens, you're able to think clearly and not from a place of fear. Yes, I don't know really what's going to happen to this person. It's bleeding in front of me, but I do know what the first step is. Is their airway clear? Yes. Are they breathing? Yes. They're just bleeding. They're not dying. Okay, now I know how to do this. They're not dying in front of me. I have to apply pressure and calm them down so that their heart rate will lower and everything's going to be okay. We're going to take it step by step. That kind of scenario helps build the brain to go into kind of like a muscle memory scenario instead of a fear-based situation. So practice it. It's not, do it once a month. Call your neighbors over and once you establish that kind of thing with your neighbors, I have a nurse right across the road. So that'd be a great type of thing to get together with your neighbors and practice that kind of stuff and see what develops.
Yeah. It doesn't even have to be medical, just other scenarios. You have no water. You have no water. What do? You have no food. What do? If you need to go use a bathroom and the toilets don't work, what do? Different scenarios like that. Probably talk for an hour, 2 hours on each one.
Yeah, probably. Ralph?
Yeah, just I guess the thing to emphasize here for me too is anytime we talk about preparedness, never prepare out of fear. Mm-hmm. Never let someone get you afraid to the point where you feel that you need to prepare. You should be preparing anyway as a proactive measure, as a way to take care of yourself, your family, your community, all of that kind of thing, but never out of fear. It's the wrong mindset, and it's a good way to screw up your preparation plans if you're doing it out of fear rather than out of logic, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Okay, well said. Okay. So homework for this week is the list that David gave us this week. We had the over-the-counter meds last week, and I'll try to get all those up today. And I'd say go buy a few cans of soup, have something ready. I mean, even if you just do a little bit at a time, that's you might be really, and put it away so that you have something in case something happens. You just need to think that way. Start thinking that way.
Yep. Think about it like a sport. You're playing the side of trying to keep everything on the rails, and you're playing against potential adversaries, which are the actual possible disasters. And how are you going to prepare? Think of it as a game. not as something to be afraid of, but how can you defend against all of these offenses of different threats, water going down or anything like that? Think of it as a game, and how are you going to beat it?
There you go. That's perfect. All right, guys. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so very, very much for this day, and for David and Karen and Ralph and all the knowledge that we're able to learn here from experiences, from real life experiences, and the medical training that David has as being a doctor. We're very thankful for that. Thank you for this day, and for everyone that's listening. Let them know that in an out of control world, that you are in control, and we put all of our trust in you, no matter what we see or hear around us, knowing that you can make the desert bloom. You can bring life into places where there's no life. We don't have to be afraid, because we put our trust in you, not the outcome, but in your character, because we know you and we love you, and we're so grateful for that. Thank you for the weekend ahead of us. We ask for your blessings on every single person out there. Let them have a good time, and give them the peace that passes understanding, so that they draw closer to you, and in all confidence, knowing that this is your sandbox. You make the rules. We're going to obey the rules, and we're going to be grateful for every single thing in this adventure that we call life. It is an adventure, and it's fun. And thank you for all the people you brought into our lives, our pets, our homes, the conveniences we have, and even the difficulties that we have, because they all teach us things, and all things work together for good to those who love you and are called according to your purposes. We thank you so much, and we love you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 Okay, guys, there's that part of the show that I know everybody's just waiting for.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding. Go to BrandenburgForGovernor.com, because I'm the best non-conceder who has ever not conceded in the history of the United States. So I do not concede to the 2022 election, and the 2020 election has to be righted. We are not going to bow to liars, cheats, and thieves, and globalists like the ones that are in Grand Rapids, Michigan, even if they threaten us. So we're going to be standing tough here, and just never say no, never give up, because God will always provide a way. Even when there seems no other way, God will provide a way, and we can put our faith in that. So God bless all of you. God bless all whom you love, all those whom you love, and God bless America. Make it a great weekend, and we'll see you Monday. It'll be Jeff Bongiorno, Jason Ikes, and I don't know who else. I got to get into the scheduling thing again. But we'll see y'all Monday. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.